live in Las Vegas. Slot machines are everywhere, gas stations, bars, grocery stores, and people play them around the clock, like over and over and over. And from this, I learned about this idea that I call the scarcity loop. And it's basically this 3-part behavior loop that is really great at killing our ability to moderate. So it's got opportunity, unpredictable rewards 2, and 3, quick repeatability. So that's the architecture of how the slot machine works. That's the architecture of how social media works. It's what makes dating apps so enthralling. It's being put in our news system. I mean, it's being put in all these different apps and institutions that are really fantastic at capturing our lives.
Welcome to the Hard Way podcast with Joe De Sena, founder and CEO of Spartan Races. We're teaching you how to overcome your obstacles in your life the same way we teach our 10 million plus Spartans to overcome obstacles on the course, with insight from the smartest, most accomplished experts from every corner of the world. Get ready to elevate your life today.
Meet your summer sidekick, new Fit Aid Hawaiian Nectar. Classic Fit Aid in a new limited edition flavor for summer. Want 20% off plus free shipping? Visit lifeaidbevco.com and enter code SPARTAN20 at checkout to get 20% off Fit Aid. Always naturally sweetened, will never contain any aspartame or sucralose.
Joe De Sena here, CEO and founder of Spartan and host of the Spartan Up, which is now the Hard Way podcast. And I got a really hard guy on today, one of our super guests, Michael Easter, author of The Comfort Crisis. This is a man that I can get along with, that you can all get along with, because if he sees evil in comfort, he is a friend of ours. Welcome, Michael.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's good to be back.
Yeah, talk to me about where you grew up. Like I'm always intrigued by people that think our way. Why did you lean this way? Where did it come from? Where did you grow up?
That's a good question. So I grew up in northern Utah, but I mean, I lived in the suburbs. It's not like I was growing up in the woods of northern Utah. At the same time, I did see the value in being outside and being active in nature, regardless of what the weather was like. I was active in scouting, and I think that was helpful. And I would say that probably when I started realizing how valuable that was my work in health journalism and working at Men's Health and doing different stories where, the common theme that runs throughout all advice on how to improve your life today, it's that you often have to go through short-term discomfort to get the long-term benefit, right? It's like exercise sucks in the short term, but it improves your life in the long term. If you're overweight, you want to lose weight, well, you're probably going to be hungry. Well, that sucks. But on the other side of that, you improve. Same with mental health, right? You got to ask hard questions. You might have to have some hard conversations, but you improve. So I would say that, my upbringing definitely teed me up to have some good experiences that led me to do some, uncomfortable things. But I would say it was really just observation from my work life.
I was recently talking to a friend of mine, Sarah, in case she listened to this, and she said she wants to wire her child's brains in a way where they know that coming out the other side of hard feels really good before they leave the house. Like when they're 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old, let's show them, let's open those dopamine pathways at a young age. And it sounds like, when you were in Scouts, maybe you got a little taste of that.
Yeah, for sure. And, in Utah, it's like, I like to say that Park City Mountain Resort got me into college, because if you would get on the honor roll, they would sell you a annual ski pass for $100. And so that was my only incentive to study. Like I just didn't care about school at all. But I grew up snowboarding, and even just the exposure to that time in nature, being outside, being cold, hiking in the backcountry to get the best runs, like having to put in physical work to get the best snow. I think that was a good teacher for myself when I was young. And I absolutely agree with that observation that once you do something challenging, you realize it probably wasn't as bad as you thought it was going to be. And it becomes a great teacher because on the other side of that, you feel great. And I think the sooner you can get a kid to realize that, the better off they're going to be. And I think, unfortunately, the trajectory with parenting over the last, say, 20 years has been, protect everything. make the world a bubble. And I don't know if that's always been good.
Let's talk about skiing for a second. So I grew up skiing myself, and I grew up in the days where we just wore jeans and a puffy jacket, and no hat because it was not cool to have a hat on or a helmet at that time. And so you were always frozen. Fitting those boots back then were incredibly uncomfortable. Getting dropped off by mom before the chairlift's open and having to hike up the mountain to get a run at or it's raining, but you paid for a ticket, and so you're going to ski anyway. You just learn to be miserable and somehow enjoy it. And this is interesting. When we look at our demographic, 1.5 million registrations a year across 45 countries, we over-index on downhill skiers. Like, downhill skiers lean into what we do. So there's got to be something. There's something there, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that it's that you have to put in effort to get a reward. It's like a very clear, oh, I did this hard thing, and then I got this fun thing from doing that, and my life improved because of that. In the case of skiing, it might be, especially if you're doing backcountry stuff where you're hiking, it's like I had to hike my butt off, but I got in this amazing run and this line that no one else could get in. And I think that it's a great teacher, and it's kind of a metaphor for a lot of things that I think we both think about and talk about.
All right, so now let's talk about parenting. So the interesting thing about parenting, and I wrote a book on it. I thought I was an expert. My wife was nervous about the book, by the way, because she was like, what the hell do we know? It's our first time. And I don't know. I thought, let's make things really hard for the kids. Let's push them. Let's have them downhill ski. They were on ski teams. Let's make them play rugby. Let's make them wrestle. When I reflect back at definitely some of the mistakes I made, I over-indexed on getting a ton of runs in that day. I over-indexed on getting to the mountain right on time. I over-indexed on things that were probably less important than the child actually not being able to find their boots, having them put the boots on themselves, feeling the pain of being late, trying to buy a lift ticket but being short money. I removed all that friction to get the runs in. And so I think I definitely made a mistake there. What are your thoughts there?
It's like you helicopter parented, but in a way that pushed them into doing hard things, kind of.
Yeah. Exactly. We went helicopter skiing. Exactly right.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And there's a big review on parenting. Well, it's basically on kids and mental health that came out, I believe, in March. And it looked at, I think it was like 90 something studies. And it really did tie this rise that we're seeing in mental health problems among young people to having everything done for them, having less time for unsupervised play, both outdoors and both indoors, and having everything so scheduled and regimented. And, I'm not a parent, but I can read a study and make some observations. And I'm also a professor, so I see changes in my students over the last basically decade. And I do think that, I'm not saying that we go necessarily all the way back to, come on when the street lights are on. I mean, I don't know if that works today. I don't think people would do it, but I do think that, trying to figure out where can you insert learning opportunities into a young person's life, I think that's probably a good question to ask yourself.
Well, you don't have children. Yeah, you don't have children, but I'll tell you this, undoubtedly, 1,000% accurate. There is no way to change the trajectory. Even if somehow we made it cool to send the kids outside and tell them to come home when the streetlights came on, it won't happen. And the reason it won't happen is because of these devices.
Yeah.
These devices have completely stolen their attention. I see it in my house. So unless Google, Facebook, and Apple came together, and Samsung, and they said, for the greater good of the world, certainly the first world, we are going to shut phones off from kids accessing the thing they want to access unless they go outside for an hour, it's just not going to happen. There's just no way.
No, I agree. And so in my newest book, Scarcity Brain, I look at what is the underlying architecture of why a cell phone could become so enthralling. And it's not just about cell phones. It's like we have all this different technology that is fantastic at capturing our attention and getting us to repeat behaviors over and over and over. So the reason that I started looking into this is I live in Las Vegas, and you make a quick observation living in Las Vegas that people love slot machines. Slot machines are everywhere, gas stations, bars, grocery stores, and people play them around the clock, like over and over and over. And that doesn't seem to make any sense, right? Like everyone knows the house always wins. So because I'm a science journalist, I start looking into this. I'm like, why are these things so good at grabbing people's attention and getting them to repeat this behavior over and over and over that they know is irrational in the long term? So long story short, this leads me to this casino on the edge of town here in Vegas, except it's not really a casino. It's a casino laboratory, like fully working. Everything about it is a casino, but it's used entirely for human behavior research. So you have a bunch of gambling companies, but also big tech companies who have invested in this place in order to do research on how humans behave. And from this, I learned about this idea that I call the scarcity loop. And it's basically this 3-part behavior loop that is really great at killing our ability to moderate. So it's got opportunity, unpredictable rewards 2, and 3, quick repeatability. So anytime a behavior has an opportunity to give you something of value, 2, unpredictable rewards, meaning you know you'll get the thing of value at some point, but you don't know when, and you don't know how valuable it's going to be. And then 3, quick repeatability, you can repeat it immediately over. We will tend to overdo the behavior. So that's the architecture of how a slot machine works. That's the architecture of how social media works. It's what makes dating apps so enthralling. It's being put in our news system. I mean, it's being put in all these different apps and institutions that are really fantastic at capturing our lives.
I would even add a 4th. I know the book's already written and out there being sold, but as you were describing the 3 attributes that make it incredibly addictive, I thought let's just take those 3 and apply them to a Spartan race or a Tough Mudder or anything hard. There's an opportunity to get a medal at the finish line. There is some unpredictability. You don't know if you're going to finish or you're not going to finish. You're going to be able to do the obstacles or not. And it's certainly repeatable. You can go do it a 3rd time. But there's a 4th piece there that it's hard. And so I think that holds people back. So it's got to be easy too. It's got to be like you just put a quarter in or a coin in, right? And you pull a slot. Do you agree with that? It's got to be easy.
Yeah, well, I mean, so that's the structure of basically any game, right? There's unpredictability. You choose to take on a task that has some level of effort that's either extremely minimal, like pulling a slot machine, or maximal, like one of your events, and you don't know how it's going to go. Right. And so I think you can kind of dial that up and down, and you see that people tend to get really enthralled by the easier things, let's say. And so like if you get really into this system of unpredictable rewards, but you're applying it to something like a Spartan race, like that's good. Right. But I think that what's happened now is that once sort of tech companies and other industries realize how good slot machines are at hooking people, it was like, well, how the hell does that work? Let's do that. And now you see it just everywhere in all these really easily accessible ways.
I think Japan, I lived in Japan for a little while, and, whether it's the declining growth rate of, the birth rate, or whether it's declining rate of marriages, whatever, they were early in this game of taking the slot machine and turning it into just, games, Nintendo, Pachinko, I think they call it when I lived over there, right? Like, so it's got really negative unintended consequences besides losing all your money.
Yeah. I mean, I think what's your most precious resource? It's your time, right? So people will balk about playing a slot machine, but then they'll spend an hour on Instagram. It's the exact same architecture. And I even talked to a behavioral scientist who said, when I see humans on their phones, I see my rats hitting a lever in the cages when I do experiments. The behavior is the exact same.
Yeah, it's pissing me off as I think about it as you're talking, because I'm thinking about myself, my family, my kid. Like, just last night, Charlie in my house, right, just staring at the phone. And my kids work out. My kids, we push them pretty hard. But any other moment that they have where they're not doing homework or they're not doing something hard, this phone is consuming every waking moment.
Yeah, it's definitely good at creeping into our lives, and I think it's in a lot of other places. Where one area that I talk about in the book where it is our food system. So in the 70s, you start to see obesity rise, and that's basically when the food industry inserted this new idea called snacking. And there's a junk food executive, basically a snack food guy, who said if you want a snack food to take off, it needs to have 3 V's. It's got to have value, it's got to have variety, and it's got to have velocity. So that's just a different way of talking about that system I just talked about. So variety, this is why there's so many different flavors packed into one food, but also so many different options of food. And then the third part, velocity. Junk foods are way easier to eat than unprocessed foods. You just naturally eat them a lot faster. There's all these triggers that push you into eating more and faster, and you start to see obesity just take off.
Special summer edition of FitAid, Classic FitAid, new flavor. FitAid Hawaiian Nectar is a summer vacation for your taste buds. Take a one-way ticket to Recovery Town with this limited edition flavor. Visit lifeaidbevco.com and enter code SPARTAN20 at checkout to get 20% off FitAid Hawaiian Nectar plus free shipping. Certified non-GMO tested, vegan, paleo-friendly, certified gluten-free, kosher, and never contains any artificial flavors or sweeteners. The FitAid Recovery Blend has glutamine, glucosamine, turmeric, BCAAs, omega-3s, CoQ10, full B complex and electrolytes. Perfect for after the race, gym, hiking or biking. FitAid is a product of LifeAid, the performance beverage company. FitAid is an official partner of the Spartan Race Series.
Yeah, you combine a phone, a slot machine, and Doritos, and that's the end of the species.
Yeah. You got yourself a short-term party and a long-term train
disaster.
Wreck.
Yeah. So, but let's talk about comfort. Let's go back to comfort crisis for a second. How do we get folks, you, me, maybe a few million of us around the world, maybe 10 million, 15 million, whatever it is, understand rock climbing, mountain climbing, swimming in cold water, whatever it may be is good. But there's 7 billion out that just don't understand why you would possibly want to get uncomfortable. How do we push that agenda?
Well, I think, first of all, realizing that in the grand scheme of time and space, we're the weirdos is important, right? It's, for all of time, it never made sense to go out and do something uncomfortable for the sake of it, because doing the next easiest, most comfortable thing back when the world was harsh and uncomfortable and you didn't have enough food, that never made sense to do hard things, right? But the difference is that just by living day to day, you had to do hard things, and that kept you healthy. That kept you basically feeling alive, right? And I think that now that our environments have shifted so much where we've really engineered comfort into our life, we're still left with these genes that basically tell us, don't move too much. Eat a little bit more than you need to eat. You don't want to be bored. Grab your cell phone. All these different things. And so you have to do some sort of strange things in this world in order to remain healthy, because we know once you sit too much, like all these different problems start to arise. Once you eat too much, all these sorts of different problems start to arise. Spend way too much time zoned into screens, different problems start to arise, on and on and on. So you have to do some things that are going to be, you have to basically select to do challenging things that are uncomfortable if you want to, I think, thrive and live well today.
Yeah, and my dream is to change 100 million lives, so we've got to convince a bunch of people where their brains, basically you're saying our brain has legacy hardware and software. It made sense when we were on horseback and standing in mud and dying of the plague to divert our attention from hard and look for easy. But it doesn't make sense now because we have DoorDash.
Yeah, exactly. Because life was hard. And so if you tried to avoid excess hardship, that gave you a survival advantage. So if you're the person who, when there's not enough food around, you go, you know what? I'm going to go sprint up that hill just to sprint up that hill. And I'm going to do it 20 times. Well, you're going to die off pretty fast because you're just burning energy to burn energy, right? So we have these drives that happen across millions of years of evolution that tell you, if you start exercising, hey, maybe you shouldn't do this. Like, we're going to make you not feel great in order to dissuade you from doing this, because that would have incentivized you to stop, more or less, back when food was scarce, which literally was for all of time until about, maybe 1950 in the US, when food started to really propagate throughout most populations in the US. And now it's kind of moving its way out across all the other, even into developing countries, really. Most places now have enough food. I think the diseases that are a result of overeating are fourfold greater than problems of malnourishment and undernourishment.
That's a great stat that I did not know. 4 times the problem is overeating. And the thing is, the way I think about it, I spent some time on Wall Street, and I love capitalism, I love democracy, but you can easily see, if you spent time on Wall Street and you listen to enough quarterly reports, you could easily see how the most altruistic person, if you and I owned a food company, for example, before you know it, you're like, gee, we got to make our quarterly numbers. How do we sell more?
Right.
How do we find ingredients that are less expensive? We got to make our numbers. And we had every great intention when we started out, but the livelihood of the company guides us in a direction. All the companies that come to us are not necessarily the ones that are selling, raw parsley and carrots, and right. It's the big companies that, have more money.
Yeah.
And those are typically the ones that are selling more, causing the 4 times disadvantage to us.
Yeah, and I mean, look, this is a good problem to have in the grand scheme of time and space. Like, the fact that we have enough food for everyone. I mean, even places, countries that do suffer from malnourishment, it's often a problem of politics and distribution. Like, personally, I don't want to have to go, walk the landscape for my food every single day. Like, it's a blessing that I can eat Doritos. But at the same time, that puts the onus on the individual. Like, we as individuals need to learn how to manage that.
Yeah, so this will piss off half the audience, but my feeling is we can't manage it. We've proven we can't manage it. We just can't. We overeat as a collective. We just can't do it. So I would say the solution, and this pisses people off, why wouldn't we tax the junk food and subsidize the carrots and the celery? Like, why wouldn't we do that? Is that a crazy idea?
I mean, I'd have to look into it more. Probably not. I mean, it gets, obviously all those things get super complicated. I'm definitely not one who's in favor of, asking, for example, like there's people are arguing, well, social media companies should make their product less engaging. It's like, well, how far are we going to take that logic, right? It's like, okay, yeah, YouTube, no fun videos anymore. Hey, Instagram, no more reels with cute dogs. Like, can't do it, right? So really we have to, because once you start to limit things that way, you're basically asking people to make things less engaging, less rewarding. And I don't want to live in a world where the government's basically telling me like, hey, dude, you can't eat a Dorito. Or like, hey, dude, you can't play a slot machine. And so it gets really tricky. But I'm with you. I mean, I'm hopeful in the sense that you've built a giant company on people who are willing to do hard things. And hopefully, I think we're in an adjustment period. I'm hopeful that we'll start to see people getting these ideas. I don't think everyone's going to get it at all, but we'll see.
No, but then you get, because we are such an amazing species, you get Ozempic, right? You get somebody taking a drug to not eat rather than doing the thing that our bodies and minds and wiring need to do. So look, let's go back down there first. I'm sorry, we're going to stay in this area. This creates a little tension. We certainly don't want people shooting heroin or smoking cigarettes right. We don't want that. We don't want 15-year-olds driving cars. So it wouldn't be crazy to put a few rules in place. Hard to get done because there's such big money in the game.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We wanted people to wear helmets when they skied. We want people to put seatbelts on when they drive. Like, there's a few things that I don't know. McDonald's is giving out free French fries on Fridays now.
Yeah. Well, it's like, and it really depends on, who you're asking and the lens you're kind of looking at each individual thing from. I mean, I think it's going to be hard these lines are like so hard to draw and they're so individual. Like, do I think that Facebook should be not allowed, should be, trying to deem like what's too engaging for people? Like, is this video of a dog too engaging? Is it getting too many views and sucking people in? Like, that seems like a hard line. At the same time, is it like, well, here's this video of some Nazis doing this crazy thing, trying to recruit people. Like, yeah, let's probably put a limit on that. But then at the same time, like, then you see how many, even those questions people will debate. It's like these questions are so hard to.
I would solve that one, and I agree with you. Very difficult, but I would solve that one. This is the greatest thing ever because we can use this tremendous addiction. During one of our death camps, we put on a death camp every summer on the farm for young kids. About 100 kids come, mostly friends, family, people that know me. And anywhere from, call it 8 years old to 18 years old, the girls, boys, they're basically in the military for a week or two. One night I was feeling, I don't know why I was like, you know what? They've worked so hard. I'm gonna offer them ice cream tonight because they're eating like raw fruits and vegetables. They've got limited amounts of food. They're in ice cold water at 5 a.m. They're getting ice cream tonight. And I'm also gonna let them use their phones for a half hour. So I put out their phones. I was not planning on making this an experiment. It just unfolded. Put out their phones, put out the ice cream. Michael, the ice cream melted. They went right to the phones. They never even went to the ice cream. That's how powerful this device is. If you use this device in a good way, that's unbelievable. So I'm not suggesting we limit, the dog videos, but what if in order to unlock the dog video, you had to speak Mandarin for 5 seconds?
Yeah.
Or you had to do a math, right? You had to do a math problem, or you had to do 5 burpees. Like, oh my God, you changed the whole world because it's so addictive.
Yeah. And I mean, it could be something that we do for, I agree with you there, especially for younger populations. I mean, there could be, I think Utah, I can't remember exactly what the law was like, but they're putting in some legislation around cell phone use in teens. But it could be that, you got to register how old you are. And then the algorithm changes where like, okay, for every idiotic video you watch, the algorithm's going to push you one that is a little more interesting. And by the way, you got to focus on it. You can't just swipe through it. I mean, yeah, I definitely think it's a conversation that everyone needs to have, and it's definitely tricky.
By the way, the other thing I would do, I'm sorry, we're just having fun here, but like if anybody's listening to too much, liberal news, they're forced to do 5 minutes of conservative news. If they're in reverse as well, right? Like at least have an open mind to what the other side is saying.
Well, that was a law. I mean, that was the fairness doctrine back in the 80s. And then Reagan came in and took it away. And it used to be that, if you had a radio show and you wanted to talk to a liberal dude, you had to talk to a conservative too. And guess how polarized the country was back then? Not as much as today, like a whole hell of a lot, not as much. And so, and especially with the rise of the internet, it's like people can just go down the most insane rabbit holes they want, That's a good fix. Could we talk about military for a second? Yeah.
I'm really, really excited. And I'm not suggesting that our country should become one big military country, but I think there's something to be said for kids as a rite of passage to do like 1 year in the military, just to get their shit together, learn to wake up early, learn to make a bed, press their clothes, look sharp at a meeting, right? Is that a crazy idea?
No, I mean, you see it in other countries and it tends to work and they tend to be fine. So I think it'd probably be a good thing for us. Yeah. So
here's an idea that I'm pushing with the Pentagon and Defense Department is they spend over $3 billion a year. Our country spends over $3 billion a year trying to recruit 100,000 kids. 150,000 kids. They've been failing as of late, still spending an enormous amount of money. We can solve the problem overnight. We at Spartan can solve the problem, right? We as a country have a bunch of ads at NASCAR we run. We've got a bunch of dust-filled offices with recruiters hoping somebody walks in. Imagine if instead at Spartan, at Tough Mudder, name the event, there's 300, 400, 500 kids that are coming out to crawl under barbed wire for the day. And imagine if the recruiters were there with those kids and there were some props there. Those are the right kids. I mean, Oh my God. I mean, you'd probably save the country $2.7 billion. And by the way, you're changing those kids, even though they're only out there for a day or two. So I want to go down that rabbit hole, but that's another thing I'm really passionate about. I don't know if you have thoughts there.
Well, I do. I mean, I've noticed so I've been a professor at UNLV for 7 years now. I definitely noticed changes even in the last 7 years of the level of resiliency the students have, their general fitness level, the number of emails I get about health problems, especially the number of emails I get about mental health problems. And I do think that finding some large scale solution like a military, I mean, I think that's definitely an option that's worth talking about for sure.
We do need a large scale solution. And every kid should wrestle also, even the girls. All right. So give me your top 3 things. Anybody listening, anybody watching, top 3 things folks should do on a daily basis based on the 2 super popular books you've written, to just be better, to level up. 3 things.
Well, the Comfort Crisis has a whole section on rucking and how the human body, one of the reasons it's built the way it is because we carry weight for distance. We're the only animal that can carry weight for distance. And it absolutely shaped how we're built, who we are, how we were able to literally take over the globe. And it's an act that more people could do, carrying. And I think that rucking is an easy way to get into that. Trying to think what else. Spend time outdoors. So the Comfort Crisis also has a long section on the benefits of being outdoors, and it goes over this idea called the nature pyramid, which basically breaks down the amount of time you should spend in different types of nature on a weekly, monthly, and annual basis. And then finally, I would say from Scarcity Brain, reading the section on the scarcity loop, which I covered, and learning how to limit it in your life, I think is going to lead really radically increase the probability that you look back on your life and say, wow, I did that right. It was a good time. Because right now we live in a time where it's just so easy to get your attention and resources captured by just so many different industries and systems, and leads you to behave in a way that you probably didn't want to.
We created a Spartan phone case, and it's a 20-pound kettlebell that your phone fits inside of.
That's
so if
awesome.
you want to carry your phone, so as you were talking, I was just thinking we should create a Spartan slot machine that is really hard to pull down. Like you get a real crazy workout, and maybe you got to do it like 40 times to get it to spin. Like that could be really funny.
There you go. I like it.
Right?
I'll be the first one to play it. You tell me when it's ready.
How do people find you? How do they find your books?
I'm at eastermichael.com. I got a newsletter that goes out 3 times a week. It's called 2%. It's at twopct.com. And then I'm on social media at Michael_Easter.
I love it. I told our mutual friend we should have you do my newsletter that ties to this podcast. We'll have you write something up about the hard way and tie it into this podcast. Could be fun for my folks.
Yeah, we'll do it, man. Sounds great.
All right. And then anybody out in Vegas, they could just pop into UNLV, say hello, shake your hand, chop some wood.
Yeah, sounds good. Tell them to hit me up on the internet. I'm there. I can give them my office hours.
You're awesome. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you, man. It was always great to chat.
Fit8 Hawaiian Nectar is a summer vacation for your taste buds. Coupled with the classic recovery vitamins and supplements of Fit8, it will have you sipping on a sunset after your next workout. Visit lifeaidbevco.com and enter code SPARTAN20 at checkout to get 20% off plus fast, free shipping.